Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the Centurions miniseries from DC Comics. Last week, we saw some action figures use their totally radical weapons accessories on a wild goose chase, before realizing that the Alaskan robot they had to teleport into space before it blew up was the friends they made along the way. Or something, who needs context? We've got issue number 2.
The cover teases the origin of the Centurions as they fly toward the reader, apparently away from Earth as it's about to be grabbed by an enormous Doc Terror.
He turned himself into a galactic-sized kaiju, so the team decided to bail on Earth and try being superheroes on another planet. Think of all the alien women Ace can hit on.
We open to the aerial specialist flying Max to a yacht trapped in a whirlpool, which narration suggests is the cause for the centuries of disappearing boats and planes being lost in their current location, the Bermuda Triangle. In all my years of marine study, I've never seen a whirlpool like that one, Ace.
I also never bothered investigating why so many other vessels managed to routinely pass through the triangle safely without ever noticing this phenomenon, thereby debunking rumors of supernatural interference that started in the 1950s. I'm a scientist.
The only swimming I like to do is in my bathtub.
Then why'd you buy the Olympic-sized swimming pool? I was drunk and I'm bad with money. Get off my case.
Max is dropped and he heads into the phenomena, confident that his gear can withstand the pressure. While it is dizzying, he notices the vortex is stopping, which isn't normal, or previously considered possible. From the bird's eye view, McCloud says it's like there was never anything going on, seeming to corroborate the rumors, even though we can see the swirling still in the present, but no boat. Apparently the endangered yacht was already pulled under in between the first 2 pages.
You know, for a premise that relies so heavily on action and peril, that's kind of an important thing to leave out if you want your audience to have any sense of intrigue or suspense. Or maybe they thought showing a boat full of people being pulled under would be too intense for younger readers.
Crystal guides Max to a nearby metallic object her scanners are picking up, but it isn't the boat, rather an enormous whale, which even Ace can see from above. As the Mariner gets closer to it, we see why it registered as metallic. It's a cyborg whale.
It's traveled back in time to kill a mermaid named Sarah Connor.
I would have figured the guy that's underwater would have caught on to that first, but whatever. The whale swims past Max, knocking him aside, while Jake Rockwell, waiting on Skyvault, insists on being teleported inside the beast with his Fire Force armor. Bet you a soya steak dinner I'll find Doc Terror in there.
This soy pro tastes like genuine cow. Cow leather, you mean?
Sorry to interrupt lunch, but...
Wow, for an obscure comic based on a cartoon based on a toy line, they kinda called plant-based meat by almost 3 decades. What's next, cryptocurrency and fidget spinners?
I guess it helps that they know it's not a real whale, because he finds an entirely artificial construct, complete with a lab and the missing yacht. As suspected, Doc Terror and Hacker are there, taking a couple people off the vessel as Jake fires his laser at the villains. I assume / hope when the citizens are out of the way. Given his fight frenzy from the first issue, you can't be too careful. He fires a plasma shell at Hacker, and because the panels don't show it very well, it's apparently swatted back as it explodes, knocking them both down. Though maybe Jake fell back before the kaboom? I don't know, like I said, the sequence isn't very well shown. Before Hacker can kill his foe, Max Ray is firing on the Whaleborg, a second missile apparently breaching the hull. With the vessel flooding and his equipment not suited for underwater, Jake is teleported back to the satellite, as the villains are forced to retreat, and the captives swim out as the ship literally goes belly up. While our heroes don't capture the enemy, they do detect them fleeing the scene back to their lair at the North Pole.
Terror's diplomatic immunity must work great if he can live there without reprisal from either Superman or Santa Claus.
After helping the Coast Guard rescue the civilians, the team is on Skyvault, glad to have a respite as Crystal compliments their work, which is an opportunity for Ace to ask for a reward, being extra pushy as he puts his arm around her and insists on a date. She shoves his arm away and tells him to keep his hands to himself.
Next 2 words out of your mouth aren't see it, then the 3rd word will be, oh my god, my crotch, you've punched me in the crotch.
The 3 of them have plans anyway, interviews for a documentary about the team, and given some annoyed dialogue, it seems it's not the first one. This time, it's by reporter Amy Berger.
Burger.
The guys aren't thrilled with Jake wanting to chill on his ranch. Ace, of course, more concerned about the attractiveness of the reporter, but their appointment is in 10 minutes, and they can relax afterward. We jump right into the documentary, saying that after World War III, resource-rich countries decided to combine their wealth to help out poorer nations, with advanced technology able to make anywhere on Earth habitable for a growing population and ushering in global peace.
Powerful and resourceful countries helping those in need for the betterment of all mankind? Wow, this really is science fiction.
An independent research station was established by Dr. Elias Terror, which basically consisted of him, his daughter Amber, and an assistant.
Real doctor or PhD?
PhD.
You know, they keep referring to him as Doc Terror. I was wondering whether or not he actually was a doctor, or if it was just an old nickname. But actually having a doctorate makes him mildly less of a knockoff of Victor Von Doom, who, last I checked, isn't really a doctor.
The discoveries and advancements by Terror were apparently so impressive that the World Council admitted him into the General Assembly, recognizing his base as a new sovereign nation. So, like a good supervillain, he hired international criminals to steal cybernetics, dodging prosecution by staying in the Arctic himself, and eventually revealed that he turned himself and his assistant into cyborgs, with designs that'll never look silly, outdated, or impractical. He vowed to take over the world, and the council was handcuffed by its own laws, so couldn't do anything about it.
Not a single world leader had the foresight to consider a nation eventually deciding to go rogue, seize power, or try committing some kind of atrocity in secret. Even if they all trusted each other at the time peace was established, they had to consider power being transferred at some point, right? How is their tech so advanced when these people are so dumb?
You are a fistful of stupidity.
They were at least smart enough to realize they'd eventually have to fight back, so retooled a project originally intended to colonize planets, that project being Skyvault, headed by Crystal Kane.
And thus were born the Centurions, the best there are to protect the world from the worst there is.
Like Ace's expression here. I thought he looked unsettling in that little panel beginning in issue 1, but this one takes the heebie-jeebies cake. It's actually hilariously creepy, so maybe it edges out a little higher. Anyway, we get to the interview portion of the documentary. Where are the shots of me in action?
Oh, we have that from your time talking to an intern backstage a few minutes ago on what we delightfully referred to as our sexual harassment cam. Roll clip!
Amy Big Mac asks about their backgrounds, where they came up from. Max Ray goes first, explaining he grew up in Seattle after the Great Flood, apparently some disaster that left the city broken off from the U.S., and protected by a wall of the mightiest plexiglass. Being drawn to the ocean at a young age, he designed a nuclear mini-sub that resulted in a government grant to construct a life-size model, which he used to chart the waters near the city. Its mysteries have intrigued me since I first opened my eyes underwater in the bathtub.
Not as many rubber duckies as I expected, though a lot of discarded bottles of Mr. Bubble. Our waters are a mess, people.
He was halfway through a 3-month mapping expedition in the Marianas Trench when Doc Terror went all megalomaniac, so Max was transferred to sea operations for the Centurions. Guess he had combat and weapons training for fun before then? Next is Jake Rockwell, whose dad was in charge of Austin, Texas's Historical Society, and a prairie reserve to boot, which is where he learned horse riding and roping cattle. When the aforementioned Third World War broke out, he quickly enlisted, and his bravery in leading his battalion got him promoted to Brigadier General. Though after hostilities ceased and peace started breaking out all over the place, he got bored with no enemy to fight, and was little more of a figurehead. Good thing Doc Terror decided to try taking over the world, because now he can fight people again, and wouldn't mind a one-on-one with the cyborg villain. He actually refers to Terror as the best thing that ever happened for him.
Everyone talks about wanting world peace, but they never think of the cost, the toll it takes on battle-hungry guys that just get so focused on blowing stuff up they don't see potential innocence within their line of fire and can't hear calls to reason because the guns over their head are firing so loud. Thank you, Doc Terror. Wait.
Lastly, we go to Ace McCloud, who lived over 20 stories above Manhattan streets and dreamed of becoming a pilot. He enrolled in flight school as early as he could and describes himself as the best pilot in the world. He actually worked on Skyvault back when it was about planetary exploration, but became one of the Centurions when the guy whose last name is synonymous with dread and fear turned out to be a bad guy. Though he hopes to soon get back to flying through space, apparently as he tries to look like a young Adam West. And why does Lucy here look less like an orangutan and more human than she should? It's really creepy. Is there some Planet of the Apes crossover I'm not aware of?
So now we have backstory on each of the Centurions, which is nice, but they still feel more like generic archetypes rather than characters. The most we get is that when they were younger they had interests, which eventually led them to fields of expertise. Then they became the only 3 people capable of protecting the planet because... reasons.
I can overlook their lives being summed up on one page with a few captions, but it doesn't make me overly invested in the characters, much less understand them better or the thought process of how they were selected for such a specialized squad. Heck, Jake's experience as a veteran of a recent war could be an interesting angle to explore, maybe explain that problematic fight frenzy of his, which itself may explain why a brigadier general isn't the leader of the team, but that clearly isn't the direction they wanted to go. Also, he looks a bit too villainous in this shot, and I don't think that's what the artists were going for either. Moving on, Amy Double Whopper with Cheese asks what Ace's relationship with Crystal is, to which he responds that he is closer to her than anyone else. The reporter asked because she wanted to have dinner with him, and McCloud insists Dr. Kane wouldn't mind, and they arrange a dinner date. There's some genuinely funny dialogue between the other 2 teammates here, joking about telling Crystal as the pilot arranges his date. The other 2 leave as the reporter assures them a private screening of the documentary after it's completed. So, Amy, how about a genuine steak? I know how to get Jake's father to let a couple of them loose.
I slip him $50 and I have to chase, rope, and kill the cow myself. But if you help out, it'll probably go a lot quicker.
On their date, presumably after their meal, Amy turns their conversation to business, specifically about the security measures keeping her out of Skyvault, the location of which is a secret.
How is it a secret? It's huge and up there! She already knew it was originally about space exploration, and I imagine anyone with a telescope and some patience could find it!
She understands no camera crew being allowed up there, but thinks just seeing it for herself would help her out, in terms of the documentary. Before long, Ace has transported her aboard, much to her gratitude, and saying he'll think of a way that she can thank him. And I'm sure no one on the internet will take that to any extremes. He gives her a tour of the biggest satellite in the history of the world, which I think only adds to my remark about the telescope. It apparently took 6 years to build, which sounds like a rush job to me. The real-life International Space Station took 10, but hey, advanced future tech and all that. They see doctors and engineers at work before getting to the central control room. Just as Crystal arrives to reprimand Ace for bringing a date on board without clearance, the reporter chops him in the back of the neck. In an underground headquarters, Jake and Max are busy playing cards, when the latter mentions something feeling off about the reporter, despite her having passed computerized security checks. But those can be circumvented. You only get out of a computer what somebody puts in it.
What, like Minesweeper? I hate that game. Now Space Pinball, on the other hand.
A few moments later, he's called Crystal to double-check their interviewer, who's locked herself inside the control room with an unconscious Ace McCloud. Max and Jake head to a teleporter just as radar picks up Doc Terror's strafer drones launching from the Arctic and heading right for them, and their shields have been turned off. As the 2 are beamed aboard, the non-hostage Centurions are suited up, just as a hole is blasted into the station. Crew are evacuated as our heroes deal with the threat, while not getting sucked out into space thanks to electromagnets. It seems there are a couple coloring errors for the same character. Max is at first colored to look just like Ace, and then colored the same as Jake. Twinsies! In a rare bit of adhering to some science, Jake's sonic ray guns stop working, because there's no air left for the sonic waves to travel on. So he hits a strafer with a regular laser, knocking out its guidance systems and leaving it to fly off elsewhere. Crystal and her security team make it inside, revealing that their unexpected guest is an imposter! Turns out that Amy's square beef patty from Wendy's is actually Amber, Doc Terror's daughter. Keeping them at bay with her gun, she boasts how her pappy's drones will soon destroy the satellite. Ace wakes up behind her, ruining Amber's shot and allowing Crystal the opportunity to subdue her. She tells McCloud to reactivate the shields and then suit up to take out any more strafers, which he does with Max operating the transporter.
Kinda weird, since I figured he'd want to stay where he can shoot the enemy fighters, but I guess he slunk inside for a soda while Jake handled things on his own with sonic cannons that don't work.
Beamed out in his orbital interceptor, fitting since he's intercepting the drones in orbit, feels like the toy gimmick equivalent of a CinemaSins roll credits moment. He dodges a few blasts, waiting until the right moment to take out the last 3 drones with 1 missile. You know, save some of that money in the budget. He returns to Skyvault, where Amber has already escaped. She apparently rigged the transporter to beam her home before the strafers would have destroyed the satellite, but Crystal managed some last-second readjustments, leaving her outside her father's lair. The issue ends with Amber pounding the door, begging to be let in before freezing to death.
That was the Centurions, issue number 2, and while it was not great, it's actually mildly better than the first issue.
Some of the banter made the trio feel a bit more like friends. Crystal got to show she's no pushover, even in a physical confrontation, and while the Amber reveal could be deduced, it was a revelation that didn't feel painfully obvious. The overall scheme was clever, exploiting a self-styled Lothario that's interested in the image he projects than any serious relationship. Incidentally, Amber did make some appearances in the show, but I can't say I really remember her from watching as a kid. Despite some history on our main heroes, we have no context for how they managed to operate as a team when they were spontaneously assigned to protect the entire planet. The history lesson for each of them was fine, but they still haven't got much in the way of personality, aside from one liking to fight and another being something of a skirt chaser. And man, they keep finding new ways to make McCloud look creepy. Maybe it's the detailing of his cheekbones when he's smiling having an unintended effect. Getting a bit more info on Doc Terror was actually nice, but without more behind his motivations, he still feels like someone who's evil for evil's sake. Despite Max's coloring errors and face of Ace, the art is still pretty good, though I am a little curious why the world leaders dress like they're on Krypton, especially when everyone else seems dressed more reasonably for a near-future society.
They may have declared world peace, but I guess that doesn't mean they don't want to look more important than the common rabble.
And while I don't mean any offense, I have to question whether or not the writer was aware of what a cyborg is. It's an entity that's half machine, half organic, and that whale didn't seem to have any biological element to it. At first, there seems to be an inconsistency with the first issue. It seemed to imply the transporter wouldn't work for someone without one of the exosuits, but here Amy Amber doesn't seem to need one. Though I guess if Ace has a suit on under his clothes, that works just as well, just like with the robo-bomb Max disposed of. There's also a couple pages at the end with articles about each of the Centurions' hometowns, written in the context of their 21st century world. This was done as a placeholder for the letters page of future issues. Might seem odd for a 4-issue miniseries, but they were probably anticipating an ongoing if this got enough sales.
It did not. Tune in next week for the next chapter, where Max Ray gets a cold, so the orangutan puts on his exosuit to lead the charge against Doc Terror. Okay, that probably won't happen, but it might give the series a couple extra points if they did. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.